Hi everyone, it's Casey here. I wanted to show you a video of how I made my altered book journal that I use for art journaling right now. Here are a list of the materials that I used. I started with an old book, and I'll give you some more details about that book once we get started. I also used eyelets, twine, filler paper that was actually mixed media paper, and then you can use a little bit of fabric. This is optional, and I'll explain to you how I used that as well. I'm going to start by giving you just a really quick flip through of the art journal that I've made first. I used a blank journal and I pulled the signatures out of it and did the holes along the side, and I'll show you how all this works. I just kind of wanted to give you a quick flip through of what I'm using at the moment that inspired this video. So like I mentioned earlier, you're going to need an old book. I purchased this one at a used book sale from the library. And the thing to look for when you're trying to decide on a book is if you fold it in half backwards and you see that little hole that I keep pointing to awkwardly, that tells you that the spine is not glued to the actual signatures. Therefore, it's a little easier to come out. Okay, so now that we have the perfect book for this, we're going to take the X-Acto knife and just right there at that line where the book pages meet the spine, you're going to very gently use your X-Acto knife to cut that apart. Now, I have sped this up some. For some reason, this really perfect book gave me so much trouble. So this is just a lesson in not everything looks perfect, and you have to just kind of play with it, and I just kept working at it, and I did a little bit of a cut a little bit, and then I would tug a little to see if I could loosen it up. And then I just kind of, there I was just trying to get a little bit of a grasp on that separation. And once I was able to get my finger in there, kept doing a little bit of tugging, I was able to actually free that apart. It's just one of those things you have to be a little patient. I wanted it to go a lot faster. I wish that it had gone as fast as this video makes it seem like it is, but I promise you it took quite a few minutes to really get this all disconnected from each other. But in the end, I'm very happy with how it turned out, so it's definitely worth the patience that it takes. So here I am almost done. There it is. Nice and detached. So I just kind of toss that to the side. You can always use those book pages for something else. And then I just kind of cleaned up some of those edges before moving on to the next step. So now with our nice and clean book cover, we're ready to dive into the fabric part. So this step is absolutely completely optional. I was kind of pointing out there that the book spine that I had, it had some writing on it, but it also was embossed, which normally, I don't know, I've never seen that before, so I felt like I needed something a little more than just paint to get that covered. So I decided to go the fabric route for this. It does turn out really nice. So the glue that I'm using here is Elmer's Craft Bond glue. And the main reason I chose this glue over anything else is that it dries to a flexible hold. When you're doing this with a journal, you're going to be opening the journal, you're going to be closing it, you're going to be kind of moving it around a lot. So I wanted to make sure that the fabric didn't get so stiff that it might break away from the journal. I don't even know if that's really possible. It just, in my mind, it seemed like let's be extra safe and make sure the glue is going to perform the way I want it to. So I put some down on a palette and I'm watering it down a little bit. Really, the only reason I'm watering it down is so that I can use the paintbrush to smooth it out. I just don't want to have any wrinkles. I didn't really have that issue with the canvas. It was pretty sturdy. It laid pretty flat. I would say if you're going to use any kind of thinner fabric for this, you may want to even iron it. I know, gasp, don't want to don't want to pull out the iron for anything, or at least I never do. So, if you are concerned with that, maybe. But this canvas was perfect. It didn't give me any trouble. So what I did notice as I was wrapping the fabric around is that this book had two little indentations. And honestly, I think all books do. I've just never noticed it because I've never put fabric on them. And so there I put extra care to get the glue into that spot. and then using that bone folder to really smush it all in there and have that nice tight line that you see. And the reason I spent so much time doing that is, again, I wanted everything to be flexible and movable. I didn't want the book to feel stiff. To me, like, if you're going to paint in a journal and you're going to write in it and it's going to be something that you really use, then it doesn't need to be stiff. So that's why I took a little extra care with all of that. So here I'm just in little areas and different sections, gluing the fabric to the cover. Nothing too technical here. I am using that, like I said, bone folder to smooth everything out. Again, I didn't want wrinkles, I just wanted it to be nice and smooth. So that's how I kind of ensured that it did. And luckily this glue dried pretty quickly, so I was able to keep working. I don't know if it's because I watered it down so much or really why, but it dried quickly and it worked really well for this. So I do recommend a glue like this if you decide to do this. So now that I have the outside part attached, I decided to cut the little flaps into 3 different sections, and that way I don't have to do it all at once, glue everything down. I can kind of glue it a little at a time, and I feel like it just kind of worked a little better for me. So I started with the little middle flaps, and I'm wanting to make sure I'm pulling tight when I did this. So that was a lot of the reason why I got those cut into different sections. And again, none of this is really complicated. It's just a lot of cutting and gluing and smoothing and a little more gluing and smoothing. Okay, so here I am. I'm just doing those very last pieces of it, and at this point you're really done with the cover. So, or you're done with this part of the cover. There's an extra part, but you know, I'm just trying to make sure that it, like I said, everything remains flexible and smooth, and I'm just moving things around. I want to make sure that it's not too tight. So now that the cover is all dry, it's all ready to go, I am going to mark my holes and get those punched for the eyelets. So as I was explaining there, I didn't love the way my book turned out with the holes because I didn't bother to take an extra step and do the eyelets, and so they look a little rough. So this is why I decided to do it on this one, and the eyelets make it look so much better. So here I'm just explaining that I used a centering ruler to figure out where to put my holes. I love a centering ruler simply because all you have to do is have the same number on the side, on each side of your journal or your piece of paper, and you know that you have found your center. So you hit the 0 kind of where you think it is. For me, I had, I think, maybe like 3 1/4 on both sides showing on my ruler. And then I also knew that my paper was measured 6 inches tall, so as long as I stayed between the 3 on each side, I would be able to set my eyelets and have them line up well with my paper. So here I am again, just trying to get everything nice and straight. I ended up doing 5 holes, so I had 1 in the center, 1 on each side an inch out from the center, and then 1 on each side 3/4 of an inch from the edge. So that was just what worked for me. So here I'm using, I guess you would call this an old-fashioned eyelet setter. It's not one of those fancy handheld machines that a lot of people, or handheld tools that a lot of people have now. I like this. It takes up less room. It works for as often as I set eyelets. It's perfect. It is a little noisy, that is the only downside to it, but I can set eyelets anywhere on a paper and not be restricted to the reach of that tool. So, so I like it. It works really well for me. So once I get this last hole in, I actually switch out the tip of the tool, and that's how I set the eyelets. And I'm using a little mat underneath it. It's hard to see because it's small, but it just kind of helps protect the work surface. And that little eyelet decided to go for a run. I retrieved it though, so all good. So once you switch out the tool, you just use your hammer, and it's also easy. And the tool that I have for my eyelets, it actually came with a few different like sizes for setting eyelets, because you can get eyelets in different sizes. So just getting all of those set. I kind of get into a rhythm once I get the first couple down. I get into a good rhythm of how to do this. So once those are all set, you're good to go. So now that the eyelets were all set, I am working on my book pages. What I did for these pages is I measured a little bit in from top to bottom, which was 6 inches for me on this book. And then I measured across and went in a little bit on that. I did my across because I was going to fold my papers in half. So I went ahead and just kind of did a full measurement across there. And here I'm just using a centering ruler, again, with the same measurements that I used earlier for setting the eyelets, for putting those holes. If you forget which ones you do, like which measurements you use, you can always take your book cover and line it up with a couple of the pages with a page and do the marks that way. It works just as well. Sometimes I end up doing that if I do a cover and then go back and do the pages later. And so then I'm just doing 2 sheets at a time with this one. I'm just going through and punching them all using that my tool. If you don't have this tool, a needle totally works. Use that for a long time before actually buying this tool. But I found mine really inexpensively on eBay. Okay, so once you have all of your pages punched, I like to stack them all up and then go through it one more time with the awl. It kind of like loosens the hole and makes sure everything is like nice and aligned. So here we are, just kind of stack everything up. I want to make sure it's all nice and straight and everything looks right. And then to measure my twine, I do about 2 to 2.5 lengths of that center part. I go a little further. You'll see I have plenty left over at the end. I just, with this type of stitch, I don't want to run out. And then I've done a video, and I'm not quite so fast, of how to do this, but I'll explain to you. I start on a hole just directly beside the center, and I run in and out. I believe this is called a pamphlet stitch. I'm not exactly sure. This is just what I do. It's kind of like a running stitch if you were sewing. And you'll be able to kind of tighten everything up in a second. You see I'm just kind of getting a few of them in, and then I'll show you. Once you have at least kind of part of a line done, I like to tug on everything and give that a nice tightening, and then it all lays really flat at that point. So then when you've gone through all those, you'll go back through your holes, and that's kind of the running stitch part. And I don't go around the bottoms or the tops of the journal. I just go in between, like where the pages are. I hope that makes sense. I think when you see the spine, it'll make a little more sense. So now I have actually gone through the very last stitch, and when I'm working on any journal, I always stop here before I tie anything off, fold it, kind of look through everything, see that it's all right. This time I decided I really didn't have enough paper, so I tear it all out, which is just fine. It works. And so when I actually went back and added the extra paper, I never went back and actually filmed the rest of this. So I have a couple of photos for you. This photo is of the stitching and where I tied it off in the center. And then this photo is how it's all kind of attached. This is all still very unfinished, and I'll go back when I start using the journal and actually add in more, like beautify kind of those rough edges. And then here is a good photo of the eyelets and how it's all stitched together. As you can see, this looks very nice and clean and pretty, and so unlike the rough edges of my other journal. But that's it. Like, it's really not a hard process. It just takes a little bit of time. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you'll give this a try. And if you have any questions, then absolutely let me know in the comments or email me. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. So I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks.